I still remember the weight of my wine glass in my hand when I stood up at that retirement party. That was the moment I destroyed my best friend's 30-year career. Margaret had been my closest friend since college. We'd raised our kids together, survived divorces together, built our lives in parallel for 4 decades. So, when she called me 6 months ago, practically vibrating with excitement about her new position at Sullivan & Associates, I was thrilled for her. At 62, after years of being undervalued at smaller firms, she'd finally landed her dream job at one of Chicago's most prestigious architectural firms. "Claire, you have to meet Richard," she gushed over lunch that first week. "He's the senior partner who hired me. He said, I have raw talent that just needs proper guidance. Can you believe it? At my age, someone finally sees my potential." I smiled and clinked my glass against hers. Who was I to dim her light? She deserved this. But something felt off from the start. The first time I met Richard Sullivan was at Margaret's birthday dinner 2 months into her new job. He was 58, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He spent the entire evening subtly correcting Margaret. The Riverside project? Oh, Margaret did the initial sketches, but of course, they needed significant refinement. That's what I'm here for, to shape that raw talent into something viable. Margaret laughed it off. "He's right. I have so much to learn." I watched her shrink a little in her seat. Over the next few months, I watched my vibrant, confident friend slowly dim. She stopped painting in her home studio. She stopped taking my calls as often. When we did meet for our usual Tuesday lunches, she looked exhausted. "Richard says I'm not ready to present to clients yet," she told me, pushing her salad around her plate. "He says my communication style is too emotional. He's helping me be more professional." Margaret had been presenting to clients for 25 years. "He's working late with me 3 nights a week, teaching me the Sullivan approach," she continued. "I'm lucky, really. Most people don't get this kind of mentorship." I bit my tongue. Was I being paranoid? Reading too much into it? Maybe this was just normal mentorship. Maybe I was projecting my own bad experiences with manipulative bosses onto her situation. But then I noticed other things. The way she started dressing differently, more conservative, more muted. "Richard prefers the team to maintain a certain aesthetic," she explained when I complimented her old colorful scarves she no longer wore. The way she stopped talking about her own design ideas. "Richard says I need to master the fundamentals before I can innovate." The way her phone would buzz with messages from him at all hours. "Just feedback on my work. He's very dedicated." I told myself I was overreacting. Margaret was a grown woman. She was happy with her job. She'd finally gotten the recognition she deserved. But was she happy? Every time I saw her, she seemed smaller, more uncertain. She started prefacing every opinion with, "Richard says," or "Richard thinks." The breaking point came at a gallery opening 4 months in. Margaret's firm was unveiling their new waterfront development designs, and Richard had finally allowed her to attend as part of the team, though not to speak to anyone about the project. I watched from across the room as Richard held court, explaining the design philosophy. Then I heard him say, "My associate Margaret did some of the preliminary sketches. Rough, but showed promise. I've been molding her, teaching her how real architects think." Margaret stood beside him, nodding, smiling that tight smile I'd seen her wear so often lately. My stomach turned. I'd seen this before. Not in my own life, but I'd watched my younger sister get slowly erased by a man who claimed to be helping her. It had taken years for her to recover. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. Was I crazy? Was this really what it looked like? Or was I just a bitter old woman who couldn't stand seeing her friends succeed? I did something I'm not proud of. I started asking questions. Quietly, carefully. I reached out to a former colleague from my own days in corporate law, someone who'd moved to commercial real estate and had connections in the architecture world. "Just curious," I said casually. "What's the word on Sullivan & Associates?" "Richard Sullivan? Brilliant architect. But," she paused, "there have been rumors over the years. He has a pattern with female associates. Takes them under his wing, promises to mentor them, then gradually takes credit for their work while convincing them they couldn't succeed without him." My blood ran cold. How many women? I've heard of at least 3 in the past 15 years. They all eventually left the firm. One left architecture entirely. I needed to know more. I spent 2 weeks tracking them down through LinkedIn, through mutual connections, through careful inquiries. I found 4 women, not 3, all between 45 and 65, all hired with promises of finally getting the recognition they deserved. I called the first one, Denise, on a Thursday evening. I'd crafted my approach carefully. I was an old friend concerned about someone potentially in the same situation. Denise was quiet for a long moment after I explained. Then she said, "I was at Sullivan and Associates for 6 years. The first year was wonderful. Richard was attentive, supportive, full of praise. Then it shifted. Slowly, so slowly I didn't notice at first. My designs became our designs, then his designs that I assisted with. He'd rewrite my reports, saying I wasn't communicating clearly enough. He'd exclude me from client meetings because I wasn't ready yet. By year 5, I felt like I couldn't design a bathroom without his approval. I quit at year 6, but by then, I'd lost all confidence. I haven't worked in architecture since." The other 3 women told nearly identical stories. Different details, same pattern: isolation, constant correction, taking credit, keeping them working late for extra mentoring, convincing them they were lucky to have him, that they'd be nothing without his guidance. All 4 had been talented, experienced architects before Richard Sullivan. All 4 had left broken. I sat at my kitchen table with pages of notes, my hands shaking. Margaret was 5 months in. According to the pattern, she was just entering the phase where his control would tighten. I called her the next morning. "Maggie, we need to talk." "I can't, Claire. I'm working on a presentation for Richard. He needs it by noon, and I don't have it right yet." "What happened to the Harbor District project you were working on?" I interrupted. "The sustainable housing development you were so excited about when you first joined?" Silence. "Richard felt it wasn't aligned with the firm's direction," she finally said. "He was right. I was thinking too small. He's teaching me to think bigger." "Maggie, I need you to listen to me." "I have to go, Claire. I'll call you later." She didn't call later. I tried 3 more times over the next week. She was always busy, always working on something for Richard, always just about to run to a meeting. I realized she was pulling away from me, just like the other women had pulled away from their friends and family, isolated by the all-consuming relationship with their mentor. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just stand by and watch my best friend disappear into this man's control. But what could I do? Show up at her office with printouts of my research like some conspiracy theorist? She'd never believe me. She'd think I was jealous, or crazy, or bitter. Then I got the invitation. Sullivan and Associates was throwing a retirement party for one of their founding partners. It was a major event, the firm's 50th anniversary celebration. 200 guests, the mayor would be there. And Margaret had invited me as her +1. "It's such an honor," she told me on the phone. "Richard specifically asked me to bring someone important to me. He's even letting me give a brief speech about what working at the firm has meant to me." My heart sank. A speech. Written by her, or written by Richard? "That's wonderful, Maggie," I heard myself say. I spent the week before the party in agony. Should I say something? Should I try to stop her from giving whatever speech Richard had probably crafted for her? Should I just stay quiet and hope I was wrong about everything? The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Denise had said. By year 5, I felt like I couldn't design a bathroom without his approval. I thought about my sister, who'd spent 7 years with a man who convinced her she was lucky he put up with her, that she was too emotional, too scattered, that she needed him to function. It took her another 3 years of therapy to recover. I thought about Margaret, brilliant, creative, passionate Margaret standing beside Richard at that gallery opening, nodding along as he took credit for her work. I made my decision. The retirement party was everything you'd expect from a prestigious architecture firm. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, ice sculptures, a jazz quartet, waiters circulating with champagne. Margaret looked beautiful in a navy dress, Richard's favorite color, I'd learned. She introduced me to her colleagues, all of whom praised Richard's mentorship program. "He has such a gift for developing talent," one junior architect told me, "especially helping the older associates adapt to modern practices." I smiled tightly. The speeches began after dinner. The retiring partners spoke, misty-eyed, about 50 years of innovation. Other senior partners shared memories. Then Richard took the microphone. As many of you know, he began, his voice carrying that practiced warmth, one of my greatest passions is nurturing the next generation of architects. Even those who come to us later in their careers, bringing with them habits and approaches that need, shall we say, gentle refinement. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. 6 months ago, we welcomed Margaret Chen to our team. Margaret came to us with decades of experience at smaller firms, but, and I mean this with the utmost respect, she lacked the polish and sophistication required for our caliber of work. I felt my jaw clench. Beside me, Margaret was smiling. That same tight smile. I've spent countless hours working with Margaret, reshaping her approach, teaching her how we do things at Sullivan & Associates. It's been a rewarding challenge, molding raw enthusiasm into professional excellence. Margaret, why don't you come up and share what this mentorship has meant to you? The room applauded as Margaret made her way to the front. Richard handed her the microphone, keeping one hand on her shoulder. Thank you, Richard, she began, her voice wavering slightly. 6 months ago, I walked into Sullivan & Associates thinking I knew something about architecture. I quickly learned how wrong I was. My hands gripped my champagne flute. Richard has shown me that everything I thought I knew needed to be unlearned and rebuilt from the ground up. He's taught me that my instincts were wrong, my communication was unprofessional, my designs were amateurish. He's given me the incredible gift of his time, working with me late into the night, patiently correcting my mistakes. I couldn't listen anymore. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet room. 200 faces turned toward me. Margaret stopped mid-sentence. Claire? I walked to the front of the room. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. But I can't let this continue. Richard's face hardened. Ma'am, this is a private event. My name is Claire Donovan. I've been Margaret's best friend for 40 years, and I need everyone in this room to know what Richard Sullivan is doing to her. Margaret's face went white. Claire, what are you? I spent the last 3 weeks tracking down 4 women who used to work at this firm, I continued, my voice stronger now. Denise Morrison, Patricia Lee, Karen Walsh, Sandra Griffin, all experienced architects, all hired by Richard Sullivan with promises of mentorship, all isolated, diminished, and ultimately driven out of architecture entirely. The room was dead silent. Each of them described the same pattern: initial praise and attention, gradually taking credit for their work, constantly correcting them, convincing them their instincts were wrong, working them late into the night alone with him for extra guidance, making them doubt themselves so thoroughly that they became completely dependent on his approval. Richard's face was red now. This is absolutely inappropriate. Margaret, I turned to my friend, ignoring him. 6 months ago, you were confident, creative, and brilliant. You had your own design philosophy, your own voice. You painted every weekend. You trusted your instincts. Now you're standing here telling a room full of people that everything you knew was wrong, that you needed Richard to rebuild you from the ground up. Tears were streaming down Margaret's face. Do you know what Denise Morrison told me? I continued. She said that when she finally left Sullivan & Associates, she found her old portfolio from before she worked here. She couldn't believe how good her early work was. She'd been convinced by Richard that she was barely competent without him. It took her 3 years of therapy to recover. That's enough, Richard said sharply. Security. The Harbor District project, I said quickly, before anyone could stop me. Margaret, what happened to your sustainable housing design, the one you were so excited about? Margaret's face crumpled. Richard said it wasn't. It wasn't aligned with the firm's direction, I finished. Right. Do you know where that design is now? I pulled out my phone, held it up. On the screen was a rendering from Sullivan & Associates' website, the Harbor District project, credited entirely to Richard Sullivan. Your design, Margaret. Your vision. Your passion. But according to the firm's website, Richard Sullivan is the sole architect. Margaret stared at the screen, then at Richard, then back at the screen. The room erupted, voices overlapping, questions being shouted. I saw several of the younger associates pulling out their phones, typing rapidly. Richard grabbed the microphone. This is a gross misunderstanding. Margaret, tell them. Tell them how collaborative our process is. You told me my version wasn't good enough, Margaret said quietly. But in that silent room, everyone heard. You told me I needed to think bigger, be less emotional, trust your vision instead of mine. You rewrote every word I wrote. You excluded me from the client meetings. You told me I wasn't ready to present my own work. Her voice was growing stronger. You told me I was lucky you were willing to invest so much time in someone at my age, that most firms wouldn't bother with an older woman who had so much to unlearn. You made me feel grateful that you were willing to fix me. She turned to face him fully. But I wasn't broken, was I? Richard's mouth opened, but no words came out. The only thing broken, Margaret continued, her voice ringing clear now, was my judgment in trusting you. She handed him the microphone and walked off the stage. The room exploded into chaos. I found Margaret in the bathroom 20 minutes later. She was leaning against the sink, mascara running down her face. I can't believe I didn't see it, she said. Or maybe I did see it. But I convinced myself I was being paranoid, or ungrateful, or too sensitive. I hugged her tight. He's very good at what he does. It's not your fault. 4 women before me. 4 women. And I thought I was special. I thought he really saw my potential. She laughed bitterly. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a brilliant architect who was systematically manipulated by a predator. I quit painting, she whispered. He said it was a waste of time, that I needed to focus on serious work. I loved painting, and I just stopped. We stayed in that bathroom for 30 minutes while outside, the retirement party imploded. I later learned that 3 junior associates had come forward with similar stories. The mayor's office had quietly left, and the Sullivan and Associates board had pulled Richard into an emergency meeting. Margaret didn't go back. She submitted her resignation that night via email, along with a detailed account of Richard's behavior over the past 6 months. The next 2 weeks were brutal for her. The firm tried to paint her as unstable, as having a vendetta. But then Denise, Patricia, Karen, and Sandra all came forward publicly with their stories. A local architecture blog picked it up, then the Chicago Tribune. Sullivan and Associates conducted an internal review and announced that Richard Sullivan was stepping back from mentorship activities to focus on design work. It was a slap on the wrist, really, but the damage to his reputation was done. Junior architects started turning down positions at the firm. Clients began asking questions. Margaret spent 2 months in therapy, unraveling 6 months of systematic manipulation. Her therapist called it professional gaslighting, a pattern of undermining someone's confidence and competence to maintain control over them. The insidious part, Margaret told me over coffee one morning, is that he never yelled. He never threatened. He was always so patient, so kind while he was dismantling my sense of self. It was all framed as helping me. She pulled out her old sketchbook from before Sullivan and Associates. Look at this. This was my original Harbor District design. It's good, Claire. It was always good. But he convinced me it was naive, amateurish, that I didn't understand the complexity of urban development. The design was beautiful, creative, thoughtful. Everything Richard's sterile version wasn't. I'm starting my own practice, she said quietly. Just me. Small projects at first. Residential renovations. Maybe some small commercial work. I need to remember who I was before I let him tell me who I should be. I squeezed her hand. You're going to be amazing. It's been 4 months now. Margaret's home studio is alive again. Paintings on the walls, sketches pinned to boards, color swatches scattered across every surface. She landed her first independent project last week, a restaurant renovation for a young couple who saw her original Harbor District design online and loved it. They specifically said they wanted that vision, she told me, her eyes bright. Not the Sullivan and Associates version, mine. She's painting again, wearing her colorful scarves, taking my calls whenever she wants, not just when Richard allows her free time. We were having lunch yesterday when she said, I've been thinking about that night, at the party. Yeah? I was so angry at you in the moment. I thought you were ruining everything, embarrassing me, making me look weak. I know, but you saved my life. Her eyes filled with tears. Not literally, but I was disappearing. Claire. Another year with him and I don't know if I would have remembered who I was at all. Like Denise. Like the others. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. but how much of myself would I have lost first? She shook her head. I thought I was too old, too experienced to fall for manipulation like that. I thought that only happened to young, naive people. Predators like Richard are experts at finding vulnerabilities. Yours was wanting recognition after years of being undervalued. He weaponized that against you. The other women, Margaret said. The ones who came forward. We've been talking. We're thinking about starting a mentorship program, a real one, for women architects over 40 who are trying to break into larger firms. So they know what healthy mentorship looks like versus what we experienced. That's incredible. Sandra, one of Richard's earlier victims, she said something that stuck with me. She said the opposite of Richard's control isn't independence, it's interdependence. It's having a support system that builds you up instead of breaking you down. She looked at me. Thank you for being that for me, even when I pushed you away, even when I couldn't see what was happening. That's what best friends do, I said simply. But that's not quite true, is it? Because the reality is, I almost didn't say anything. I almost let my fear of being wrong, of ruining her happiness, of being called jealous or bitter, keep me silent. I think about that sometimes. If I hadn't stood up that night, where would Margaret be now? Would she have lasted 6 months like the others? A year? Would she have eventually left architecture entirely, convinced she never had the talent she thought she had? Or would she have become so enmeshed in Richard's control that she never would have left at all? I don't have an answer. All I know is that when I saw my friend standing on that stage, thanking a man for systematically destroying her confidence and stealing her work, I couldn't stay silent. Even if I was wrong, even if it cost me our friendship. Some risks are worth taking. Last week, I got an email from Patricia, one of the other women who'd come forward. She'd attached a link to an article in Architectural Digest about innovative female architects over 50 who were reshaping urban design. Margaret was featured, talking about her new sustainable housing project, a bigger, better version of her original Harbor District vision, the one Richard had buried. This design philosophy has been mine for years, Margaret was quoted as saying. I just forgot that for a while. I let someone convince me that my vision needed to be refined, improved, made more palatable, but the truth is, it was always exactly what it needed to be. It just needed someone who trusted it, starting with me. The article included photos of her studio, vibrant with color and life. And there, in the corner of one photo, was the painting she'd finished last month, her first one in almost a year. She'd titled it Raw Talent. I have it hanging in my living room now. She gave it to me as a thank you gift. Every time I look at it, I remember that night at the retirement party, the weight of the wine glass in my hand. The moment I chose to speak up instead of staying safe and silent. I destroyed a retirement party that night. I humiliated my best friend in front of 200 people. I ended a respected architect's career, but I also saved my friend's life. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.